All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Wealth Building for Dummies podcast. My name is Kyle Demian, and I'm joined with Renji Matthew, as always. Today on our podcast, we are talking about how former President Donald Trump has actually raised the idea of getting rid of income taxes and replacing the primary government revenue source with tariffs. So we're going to talk about whether or not we think the likelihood of that happening is high or low. What could happen if we do get rid of income taxes and we do switch to tariffs? And lastly, I think kind of like what we expect to actually happen over the course of time. And let me look it up, and let's just look up the I'm a big believer on definitions. Let's look at the facts of what a definition of tariff is. And a tariff is simply a tax or duty to be paid on a particular class of imports or exports. So if you're watching this, you're not quite sure what a tariff is when the tax is on goods that are being imported or exported, right? So Renji, do you want to start off our conversation with like what your initial thoughts are when you hear former President Donald Trump talking about removing taxes and bringing in tariffs? Because I think on the surface level, this sounds great, right? But in the underlying areas, there could be some problems, right? So let's talk through those.
Yeah, so anytime a politician makes a rule about a certain, whatever it is, if they're talking about increasing or decreasing taxes anywhere, you want to see what that's going to affect otherwise, right? So if he's going to take away taxes on income, where's that going to go? Because it's going to hit something. So in this case, if the foreign countries are having to pay more on taxes for importing or exporting, they're probably going to take that and affect the consumers having to pay more, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, if you're making more income, there might be other ways to write off in taxes to it, especially like we talk about retirement accounts or starting businesses and the tax loopholes that are there to help write off more taxes. So if you're trying to buy a car, let's say, yes, your taxes or the cost of money on that car might be higher, but is there somewhere else you can, bring that down? Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. And here's how I look at it. And I think we have very similar viewpoints then on it too, is the costs are going to come from somewhere. These corporations aren't just going to shell out extra money in these tariff taxes and reduce their profits, right? What's going to happen is, for example, Toyota. Toyota is built overseas, shipped in for all of their cars, right? So Toyota isn't going to just take all of the hit and the taxes without raising their prices for U.S. consumers. And now some people actually, now that I'm thinking about it, some people may see this as good. Maybe then we should buy American and not buy stuff from overseas. But a lot of the times, I think most of the stuff that is made in the United States, they probably get some equipment or they get their materials from overseas and they build it in the U.S. I've seen that happen before as well. So I don't know if this would necessarily solve all the problems. And we actually used to have tariffs. The government used to use tariffs, and there wasn't an income tax probably 100 plus years ago. And then they had to bring out the income tax because tariffs weren't producing enough revenue for the government. So I think that's another one of the major concerns that a lot of experts are saying as well, that Trump's idea just wouldn't be able to generate the amount of revenue that would be needed and the amount of revenue that income taxes already bring in. Because based on where we're at right now as a country, we're in $35 trillion of debt and counting. Social Security is having some problems and going to run out of money in less than 10 years. Medicare is running into some financial troubles as well. So like switching to tariffs, I don't know if that's going to actually help. I think, potentially a better solution, and then we'll turn it over to you, Renji. I've always thought about what about a flat tax? Or maybe if it's not a flat tax, some type of 2 or 3 tiered system to keep it simple where everybody pays 15% of taxes. Or maybe you define, lower class, middle class, and upper class, and lower class pays 15%, middle class 20%, upper class 25%, and it's just a flat tax across the board. But that would take a lot of deliberation, I guess, between the Republicans and the Democrats to be able to land on something that would make sense for both parties. But ideally, I think that's the best way to help us overcome the deficits that we find ourselves in, right? So, Renji, what are your thoughts on that?
I think you're right. The problem is they can never agree, right? They both parties can never agree, and that's what we always come like. They always like to argue and fight each other on everything. And in the end, it's not hurting them, it's hurting us, right? The population, the populace is who has to suffer through whatever decision they make, right? Mm-hmm. So good or bad, because they get to keep making their own raises, their own incomes, and it feels like there's a lot of insider trading and all this stuff happening, but nothing happens to them. But the consumers, the people, the population have to live with the decisions they make. So if they could ever come together, I'm sure they could make some decisions that could help. But a lot of times when they do come together, it's stuff that helps them, their own pockets, I feel like, right? So yeah, that's the problem with government. We need government for, order and all that stuff. But then when that said government takes things for their own benefit and not to help the population that they're governing, that's when things go awry, right? And I think that's what's been happening.
A couple of comments I see in this article here too, from the New York Post. Somebody goes on to say that the price of imports would rise, but then so would the U.S. dollar, leading to lower sales and income for exporters. So that's kind of what we were talking about, where it's going to be lower income for actually the corporations, right? And then somebody else went on to say, Brian Riley said, he must have done the math on this, but he said it would take a tariff rate of 71% to generate the same level of revenue that income taxes bring in. However, a tariff rate of 71% would dramatically reduce the volume of imports, he argued. As a result, the revenue generated would be nowhere close to $2.2 trillion. So while on the surface level, getting rid of income taxes sounds great, sounds awesome. Switching to tariffs, okay, let's put it on the companies. But for a 71% tariff tax rate to actually overcome the income taxes that the government already collects on an annual basis just doesn't sound like it's going to be possible. And it doesn't sound like it's going to work. So, unfortunately, I don't think this will move forward. I don't think this will pass, Senate or the House or whoever has to go through. But it's a good idea. And I like the fact that at least ideas are coming out and people are starting to talk about different ways to handle this problem. It could be he's coming out and saying this to get votes, which, of course, we have an election later this year. So that's good marketing, right? But I don't think it would be possible. And I think you're on the same boat, right, Renji?
Yeah, and even for some reason it passes, right? Even if it passes, the problem is the rich always know how to make a way for themselves, right? They have the money to pay for the really good CPAs, the tax advisors, or the tax law attorneys that know how to use the tax codes to their advantage. And when they do that, that burden is taken to the middle class. Again, it's the population that's always affected by whatever the decisions are made, be it taxes, income, anything it is, and like you mentioned before, our taxes our debt is up at almost 35 trillion. So taxes are only going to go up, or taxes has to go somewhere. If it's on the population or the corporation's income, property tax, wherever it is, taxes are going to have to go up to pay that debt down. Right? It might not be in our generation. It might be in our grandkids' generation. We don't know. But we should be trying to leave the world a better place when we're gone, right? For our kids and our future generations. But it doesn't seem like that, right? And this is where it goes back to taking control of your own businesses and stuff like that. That way you can set up your legacy for your future, because the way the world is going right now, if you let the governments control your future, your kids might not have a future. I know I took that in a different direction, but
no, it's okay. I liked it. That was a good way to summarize us up and to get us to the point where we can wrap up the show. So yeah, with that, I think you're spot on. And that's why we talk so much about, controlling your income, controlling your money, not only today, but for your future and for the financial future of, your generations that come behind you too. So with that, thank you guys for tuning in. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. Take care.